Well, Ben, to quote your good friend Fred Rogers, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Dave Morris alongside Ben Felder with the Oklahoman outside the Oklahoma State Capitol for the Oklahoma Teacher Walkout just off the Lincoln Terrace neighborhood. It is a gorgeous day out here and a lot of people rallying once again.
Yeah, I think we saw our largest crowd yesterday, and it looks like another large crowd today. And I'm sure the nice weather isn't hurting. But to be fair, even last week when we saw some freezing rain conditions, we still saw quite a crowd here at the Capitol.
Let's talk about that crowd size real fast. 50,000 is the number you're hearing for yesterday? That seems large.
Yeah, some OEA officials had said that from the stage. I mean, I've said before, I try to kind of stay away from crowd size counts. It's just really tough. Unless you've got a box score from a baseball game, it's really hard to get those exact numbers, and even then. But like I said, I think it's fair to say that yesterday we saw our largest crowd, and the reason I say that is not only was the inside packed once again, the South Plaza was, but the north side of the Capitol, there's a grass park there. I mean, that was as full as I'd seen it. People were spilling over into the streets. The troopers finally had to kind of do some traffic control. I don't say finally as if they haven't had a presence out here, but they're continuing that today, stopping traffic because there's just so many people out here that it's not safe with having these major roads around the Capitol. But yeah, another large crowd today as the walkout continues.
It is a beautiful day. It's expected to be in the 60s today, although it is very pleasant right now. The crowd is a mix of people wearing sweatshirts and shorts, so it's that borderline of, hey, it's kind of chilly, or it's super nice out here. It's day 9 of the Oklahoma Teacher Walkout if you count from Monday of last week when it began to Tuesday of this week, or day 7 if you're just counting school class days. But to be fair, teachers really rarely have a day off, and you and I both covered plenty of education events over the past weekend, so it rolls on.
Yeah, day 9, it's kind of interesting. That's the way that we're referring to it in the Oklahoman. Got my fair share of emails asking why that is the case.
Come on, Ben, it's 7. Nope, it's 9.
9, we decided to count the weekends, and I will say there are some school activities over the weekend, like test prep, and I knew of some teacher told me about a dramatic play that was scheduled for Saturday that had to be canceled because of the walkout. So schools have shut down over the weekends as well, and let's face it, teachers work over the weekends. Like you said, we've been covering some demonstrations. There were some town halls on Saturday, a prayer vigil here at the Capitol on Sunday. So I think it's fair to count the weekend. But however you count it, this is week 2 of the walkout. Teachers continue to say that they're out here for as long as it takes. What's interesting is I was talking to a few teachers this morning, including one teacher from Luther, who said that she's been out here every day, but her school's going to be back in session tomorrow. She said she was torn by that decision. She really wanted to get back to the classroom. She missed her students, but she also felt like it was important to be out here. But she'll be back in school tomorrow, and so it'll be interesting to see if we hear of other schools that are saying, you know what, we're going to go back tomorrow, especially if they don't feel like the legislature is going to take any more action.
Let's talk about the action we saw a little bit today in the House, or in the Capitol, I should say.
Yeah, kind of a repeat of what we've seen is Democrats are trying to push forward a repeal of the capital gains tax deduction. That's something that the OEA said last Friday that had to happen for this walkout to end. That would generate roughly over $100 million. It's unclear how much of that would go to public schools. There would have to be some kind of earmark on that legislation. But that all seems like kind of a moot point because House leadership, Republican leadership, has continually said that they are not going to pick this up. I had a story over the weekend in which House Majority Floor Leader John Eccles told teachers at a town hall on Saturday that, listen, I know you want capital gains, but in order for us to get the gross production tax increase that we got a week earlier that helped fund a $6,100 teacher pay raise, we had to tell our caucus, our members, that we weren't going to touch capital gains. And he said, hey, you can disagree with me for making that original deal, but right now I can't go back on that compromise or it'll just be open season. So Democrats continue to try to make that force. Teachers are inside the rotunda chanting as the House meets, but right now the House doesn't seem to want to go in that direction. There has been some discussions about maybe going after wind, putting some increased taxes on wind energy. I've talked to some teachers who say, I really don't care how they do it. I just want to see more funding, and so we'll have to wait and see what action, if any, happens from the legislature today.
You talked about the various events that are happening. Last night we were both outside Capitol Hill High School, where Oklahoma City Public Schools opened up the field house at Capitol Hill for those teachers and those rallying who were 60 miles and beyond the Oklahoma City's limits, giving them a place to stay. I caught up with Representative Forrest Bennett last night and chatted with him. And that conversation was, hey, a lot of parents, teachers, and students are approaching the congressmen and women out here. What are they saying? And he said to him, a lot of it was policy. A lot of it was, hey, Representative, how does this work? So it's been educational for those coming out here to see procedure.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of teachers that said that they've, these are not, maybe U.S. government teachers that have said like, hey, I've really learned about the government process out here. Some have even brought their kids and their students and said, hey, this is a great opportunity to kind of see how this works. No matter how this ends, I mean, they're getting kind of this is a real world example of democracy, and it really is. And talk about that event last night at the school at Capitol Hill, and I was kind of thinking that I think there was kind of a desire also on the part of teachers to kind of get together. Obviously, they've been getting together here, but get together at a school. The Oklahoman's Tim Willard had a great story, I thought today, about teachers at Wilson Elementary here in Oklahoma City that kind of had a play date yesterday because they missed their students. And I've seen several signs out here from teachers that say, I missed my students. And they'll tell you that they're doing it for their students, that the focus is on classroom funding. But for a lot of teachers, that's their passion, working with kids, working with students. And, they've been away from that for several days. And so, so it'll be interesting to kind of see how much longer this continues. A lot of teachers will say, hey, I want to get back in the classroom. I'm desperate to get back in the classroom, but this is important. I also spent some time this morning going to some child care facilities. I was at a church today that was offering drop-in care. I talked to some parents about how they're kind of handling this because this is a strain on a lot of families. I talked to a mom who's a cashier, and she said, hey, I've had to use some personal time to take care of my kids. I'm using this drop-in facility today. She described it as a pain. She said this has been a major disruption, but she said, you know what? I'm willing to put up with this as long as it takes because I feel like the teachers are doing this for my kids. That yes, this is a hassle right now, and it's a struggle for my kids. They want to be in school, but teachers are fighting for my kids, and I'm willing to kind of do my part. And I will tell you, I mean, there are as many opinions as there are people in Oklahoma, obviously. The OEA has continued to say that they have public support. I've seen various polls that show that. There are plenty of people out there who probably feel like the teachers need to get back to class. Chris Castile had a story today about a lot of the Republican candidates for governor who said that they would not have supported the teacher pay raise, that they don't support the strike. I mean, obviously they're focusing right now on Republican primary voters, but they obviously think that that's where their primary voters are at, if that's the position that they're taking. So there are a lot of opinions out there, but I have to say, it really does feel like, for the most part, that public support is on the side of teachers, and a lot of that is just kind of anecdotal evidence on my part. But I've talked with hundreds of parents. You've seen businesses that have put up signs, and I've talked to lots that are, like I said, that are upset about this demonstration and feel like teachers are not going about it the right way. But for right now, it seems like Oklahomans are on the side of teachers. Is that going to be enough, though, to push the legislature? Because once again, those Republican candidates for governor, they feel like their voter base is against this, and that's how they're kind of that's how they're shaping their campaign policies and stands. Well, that building is full of Republican lawmakers, many of which who are facing Republican primaries in a couple months. And so, people may be saying, hey, Oklahoma seems to be on board with teachers. Why is the legislature not going along with this? Well, if they're focused on Republican primary voters right now, it may be that their voters are saying, hey, we don't support this. We don't want to see any more taxes increased, and we think teachers need to get back to the classroom.
I mentioned the interview with Representative Forrest Bennett, a Democrat. He reminded me, hey, Dave, we are doing other things in addition to what you see here. Speaking of community support, a couple of the donors last night, Peter Fulmer and I believe Barbara and Mark Brockhouse, were those supporting last night. They both indicated community support. Hey, this was their way to help out. They support the teachers just from community business people. They wanted to weigh in. Barbara and Mark, parents of students at Class A SAS, I asked them about the testing, if they thought that would disrupt, because they had a student who was going to be testing, and they said they didn't believe so. Their student was already prepared, just ready to take the test at this point. But if you want to remind us kind of the timeline now of testing.
Yeah, story in today's paper, the testing window has been extended by 1 week. State Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister said that she was worried about no matter when this walkout ends. In fact, she said she would have extended the testing window even if schools had been open yesterday. But she felt like it was important to give schools more time to get students kind of caught up to speed before they take the test so they're not cramming. But that's as far as the extension will go. I believe, I think it was in the same boat yesterday. I didn't have my notes in front of me. I believe it was April 20th. It's now been extended to April 27th. It's a little bit later if you're taking the test online into early May. But that's the latest that it's going to go. And the reason why is because they need to be able to get those results back in the hands of schools by June 1 so they can start making decisions about what kind of student support services they're going to provide over the summer break. And what's interesting about testing is I guarantee you talk to a lot of teachers out here, they're not going to be big fans of tests. High-stake testing has been a point of contention for many educators who say that it has reshaped public education to be focused on test-taking and not on learning. The State Department of Education has agreed and has tried to tailor the test. They've reduced the number of tests in recent years. The tests are still a fact of life in schools. It's still an important way to judge academic performance. And so it'll be interesting to see what the test results look like from this year, from this month, because last year, new tests for the state, new state standards. Last year's results were serving as a baseline, and the state has set some pretty ambitious goals for student performance in the coming years. And this year is going to be an important year to see, are they on track to meet those goals? You have to imagine that being out of school for as long as some of these kids have is going to have an impact on test taking. And when those results come out later this year, it's going to be interesting. Our school's going to say, yeah, our results were low, but our kids were also out. Some people may say, well, yeah, you guys closed schools. I mean, it's going to, testing is a controversial subject, I guess is my point. I don't expect that controversy to end this year, especially as we start to talk about how the walkout impacted it.
Could be known as an outlier this year. Let's wrap this up with a couple points. Those teachers who marched from Tulsa starting last week, we expect to see them today.
Yeah, sometime around, I think, between 1 and 2 o'clock, they're supposed to show up. I talked to one of the organizers today that said that there's going to be a big greeting for them as they arrive. I mean, yesterday we saw a lot of teachers and students that were marching from various points in the metro.
And the group of lawyers.
Yeah, and there was a dramatic showing of that, so I expect that to be the same today. These teachers that started out 7 days ago marching from Tulsa to get to Oklahoma City. I'm kind of jealous of their Fitbit steps, probably. But yeah, they're going to be arriving here, and some of the teachers, I think, has said they're going to try to lock arms around the Capitol, kind of welcome them, and once again just try to put pressure on lawmakers to increase public education funding.
I was chatting with the Oklahoman's photo editor Doug Hoke last night. He shot some photos of the Tulsa marchers over the weekend. He said they're basically in 3 groups: those who are walking a little bit faster than those who are walking a little bit slower towards the end. This morning, Oklahoma City inaugurated its new mayor, David Holtz. His family was there, Rachel and their 2 little ones, George and Maggie, and Mayor Holt joked to the crowd, tongue firmly in cheek, that, hey, my kids are here, this is great. Other children are more than welcome to come out here because they're not in school right now.
Yeah, and I think with a new mayor, education will be an interesting thing to watch. This is not the case in some other states, but in Oklahoma, cities don't have any control over schools. I mean, the city hall is separate from the school district. In fact, there's about 24 school districts within the city limits of Oklahoma City, most notably Oklahoma City Public Schools. And in the past, we've really seen kind of city hall, I mean, in some ways, take a hands-off approach to schools. They've been involved in some way, maps for kids in some other areas. But, it's been interesting. I feel like Mayor Holt has talked enough about education to where we're going to see a little bit more involvement. And I don't mean that as a criticism or a commentary on past leadership, but he's talked about it. He's a state senator. Obviously, he's had his hands in education when it comes to funding. He's got kids in public school. So it'll be interesting to see what this new mayor feels like he wants his role to be in education. I know that when you talk to him, he'll say that education is one of the most important things when it comes to economic development, when it comes to attracting new families, especially to the urban core, some neighborhoods that the city has invested a lot of money and development into. So it will be interesting to see with a new mayor what happens on the education front.
There you have it, a recap of day 7/day 9 out here at the Oklahoma State Capitol as the teacher walkout continues. We will have live updates later this afternoon, probably around 4 o'clock, and then updates as warranted from the south steps of the Capitol. Ben, great job as always.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Dave.
All right, more coverage from Ben Felder can be found on News OK, various social media platforms. We have plenty of other reporters working on this. He mentioned Tim Willert, Dale Dimwalt is inside, and our photographers as well. And more videos, of course, can be found on newsok.com.